Hello and welcome to Coffee with Carey. Thanks for being here today. I appreciate you stopping by. We're going to talk about who pays on a first date. Guy pay, girl pay, split it, nobody pays, you guys just run away. What do they call that? Dine and dash, that's what you call that. Don't do that. No, not recommending that. I have some opinions on this, and this is what I share with my clientele when they're paying for my opinions. That's what I'm sharing with you today. If you're new here, I'm Carey. I'm a matchmaker, a dating coach. It's all dating and relating on this channel here because that's what I bring with me to YouTube. If that's interesting, hope you'll subscribe. There'll be opportunities for that along the way. But for right now, let's get down to it. Who pays after a first date? That's what's on the agenda. I hope you'll stick around. So who pays, right? There's a couple different options. One, the man picks up the tab. Two, whoever asked the other person out on a date. I've heard people say that's how they decide who pays. It's Dutch. Both people could be paying. They could be splitting it. One person pays, the other person sends them money on Venmo, something of that nature. But whatever you want to do is perfectly acceptable, I would imagine. However, I have a couple things to share and then what I suggest to clients. One, I would mention to you that very often women make judgment calls based on how the man handles the situation when the check arrives. So they assume, one, if a man doesn't pick up the tab or offer to pick up the tab, and I'll remind you again, not making sweeping generalizations. This is averages, right? But this is what I see with my clients on a regular basis, that these women assume that one, he's not the gentleman that she thought he was, or he was never a gentleman in her mind, and she just found out that that's the case. Number two, she thinks he's cheap, and this is going to be a problem later on. And number three, she assumes that he didn't really like her, so he's figuring, I'm not going to ever see her again, so why not just split the bill? Any of these could be true in any given situation, but I always think, why would we assume? We could just wait and see, assume the best, move on from there, see what happens on date number two, let that go and figure out on the other parts of the date, is this somebody that you wanted to spend more time with? And you'll figure out very soon whether or not it was because he didn't want to see you again. You'll also find out whether he's a person who on the second date is going to also split the bill with you, or you'll find out that he's a gentleman or not based on his behavior on subsequent dates. So there's no reason to assume. If you had a great time, go again, and these things will become apparent to you as you get to know this person better. Now, what I suggest to my female clients on a first date is this. When the check comes, let the man pick it up and offer to help with the bill. Those are the words I actually like them to use. Would you like me to help with the bill, their check? If he says yes, then go ahead and grab your wallet, pull out your card, etc. If he says no, I suggest that my gals ask one more time to show that you're serious about offering up your half of the check and say, are you sure? And if he says, oh, okay, at that point, get out your wallet. Or if he says, no, I've got this. Well, then that's your cue to bring your gratitude to the table, literally, and thank him. So, oh my gosh, that's so nice. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. It was really good. So I'm always telling my female clients to offer to share the check, and not as an act. Be prepared to pay your part of the bill, because this happens often that a guy will say, oh, that'd be really nice. Or sometimes the guys say, oh, I'll get the bill, but if you want to leave the tip, that would be great. All of these are perfectly acceptable, and people have very different reasons for all of these choices. But know that other people are also making assumptions based on whatever choice you've made, right? That's the way interactions work. What you do is then filtered through someone else's experience, and they make certain assumptions. It just happens, right? So I would want to share here that I feel that age somehow plays a part in the answering of this question and how things play off. I would suggest that men in their 50s, that if someone is offering to share the expenses of the date, that it's more likely a financial decision, because I think they were raised to know that women appreciate chivalry and a man picking up the tab. So if he's being a little bit more frugal, maybe he's just dating often, and it adds up if you're going out all the time and taking women out for drinks and appetizers, depending on where you live, that perhaps it is a monetary decision if an older guy says, or it is, as though some of these women assume, an indication that this may be your only date and he's just going to cut his losses by splitting the tab with you. That's what I think happens more often with guys over 50. On the other side of that, I think that younger fellas, millennials, let's say, are more likely to have been splitting the tab their entire dating life. So they're not necessarily saying, I'm going to split the tab because I don't ever intend to see her again. I may as well have her pay half the bill. And they're not thinking that they have to pay the whole bill to be a gentleman, because that's not how they were raised or their dating experience. So while you're not often going to see an older guy going Dutch with a woman he had a great date with and wants to continue seeing, you may see that with younger fellas. And here's an extra piece I wanted to add to the conversation, which is that if you're a guy and you're thinking, well, I'm not going to be paying for every date we have, I would suggest that you, if you want to see this woman again, pay for the first date. And the next time the date comes around, let her grab the check. I know lots of younger couples who just take turns picking up checks. You don't have to actually split it. Grab the whole check on the first date and let her get the second date. I think sometimes people are unaware too of where they've invited somebody. So there could be, I've seen on occasion where a fella I'm working with, making a very nice living, can afford to be working with a matchmaker or a dating coach, asks out a woman who does not have the same financial means he does, and he's invited her to a place that he enjoys and frequents. Now, for him to ask her to split the bill in a place he chose when he asked her out, I don't think that would be necessarily fair. But I think if after the date they go somewhere else for coffee or they go out for ice cream, a fella could let the woman pick up the check in that situation. Or on their second date when they go out, she should be more than willing to pick up the tab for some other place that she chose. So I think that you'll see younger people continuing as they date, not just in those first couple months, will continue throughout their relationship to share in the costs of going out and doing things in the world. If you're going out to eat, brunch, breakfast, lunch, dinner, miniature golf, to the movies, people end up splitting it, especially if they're evenly matched in income. So to recap, I would just say that on a first date, I believe that the man should pick up the tab if he was the one who asked this woman on the date, if he chose the place, if he can afford to, if he intends to see her again, if he wants to be looked at as someone a woman would automatically assume is chivalrous and a gentleman and generous. You don't ever want to see her again, you could do whatever you want. If you're under 30, you do you. If you're somebody who's not making a lot of money, I think I would take that into consideration when choosing the place. You don't have to impress somebody with a place you can't afford and set up expectations of something that nobody's going to be able to live up to later. I don't think you need money to be dating. I've got videos of super fun things to do on a date that are free. So there's no excuse for taking somebody someplace where you can't afford to pick up the tab yourself. And you may be aware of the fact that I never recommend people go for a meal on date number one or a cup of coffee. My clients end up going out for drinks, doesn't have to be alcohol, but beverages and appetizers. I feel that's the right amount of time spent. It's not quite the time commitment or financial commitment of dinner, but it's also not the lower end of that spectrum, the small amount of time investment and financial of coffee. It's kind of right there in the middle. There's people who always want to do an activity for a first date. That's fine as long as you can be conversing and looking at the other person and picking up on facial cues, body language, and the sort. You know, obviously, you're not going to a movie where you're staring straight ahead with no communication on a first or second date. I don't think men should always be paying the tab. I don't think any one person should always be paying the tab. I think it should be shared as long as both people can afford it. And I think where you go should be chosen by what people can afford. No point living beyond your means. But if I'm being honest with you, I don't love the idea personally of splitting things down the middle and sharing. I'd rather one person pays this time, like when I go out for lunch with my girlfriends. I just pick up the tab and I say, Nick, you get the next one. And the next time we go out, she grabs the tab and we just kind of alternate. And that way nobody's looking down the bill and figuring it out, breaking out the tip. And, we don't have to even look at that. We're taking turns with lunch. And I think that's how it can be with dating in the early stages. I'd love to hear what you think. You can leave a comment down in the comment section and tell us all whether you think I'm crazy and old-fashioned or whether you agree with my assessment of how and who should pay on a first date. Love to hear from you. Be nice. Appreciate you stopping by today. And, my mom said if you liked the episode that maybe you'd want to give it a thumbs up. That would be super swell. I hope you'll also subscribe and hit the ring bell so you're notified every time I upload a new episode. And I'll look forward to seeing you back here again soon. Until then, thank you again and have a good one.